We are up and recording.
All right. All right. Good afternoon. This is Brenda Bartlett, Chair of the Oregon Board of Accountancy Peer Review Oversight Committee. And I call this public meeting of our committee to order at 3:02 p.m. via Zoom on January 17th, 2024. This meeting is open to the public and is being recorded. The purpose of the PROC is to provide oversight of the administration of approved peer review programs in order to provide reasonable assurance that peer reviews of Oregon licensees are conducted, reported in accordance with the minimum standards for performing and reporting on peer reviews. PROC will review and submit to the board for approval peer review programs that comply with the minimum standards for performing and reporting on peer reviews. PROC will provide oversight of approved peer review programs to the board, and PROC will comply with all other requirements as provided for in OAR 801, Division 050. In the performance of duties as a member of a committee appointed by the board, all committee members will support the mission, goals, and values of the board. Committee members will not disclose confidential information that comes to their attention during the course of carrying out their responsibilities. Requests to any committee member for copies of public information or for a public statement relating to committee or board matters will be referred to the executive director. Board and committee members are expected to attend all meetings and be prepared for the discussion by reading the agenda material prior to the meeting. Committee members are expected to participate in the individual review of applicant files as assigned, providing timely notification to the committee coordinator if a potential conflict of interest exists. Likewise, committee members must provide timely notification to the committee coordinator of any conflict of interest in any matters to be discussed. Members of the committee, please remember to mute your microphones during the meeting to avoid unnecessary background noise, and do not use the chat room feature for any discussions. When you want to speak, you can unmute yourself and state your name prior to speaking. Should any technical issues arise, we'll pause the meeting until they're resolved. We'll now take roll of all participating members and guests. For any participating guests, please identify yourself at the end. So,
Madam Chair, sorry.
Yes.
Before you go much further on this, before you call roll,
Yep.
there is a super embarrassing error on your script.
Okay.
That I just discovered. Haley, for the record, you're not getting fired from your from your assignments as PROC liaison. I completely interplayed two committees here, so the change in liaison assignments does not impact the PROC. It impacts the other committee that I've been working on all day to get ready for. That's the committee tomorrow. So there is no liaison change for PROC. Sorry, I got my committees confused.
Okay, so it's not Jason who's showing up.
Please, sorry. Healy's still.
I should have asked. I was confused, but I thought maybe there was two liaisons.
It's me. There's too much going on, too many committees.
Got it. All right. Okay, well, we will now take roll of participating members and guests. Committee members, I'll start with Brenda Bartlett, that's me, I'm here. David Sakulis.
Here.
Michael Rice.
I'm here.
John Howell.
Here.
Kim Conway.
Oops, here.
Carrie Ott.
Here.
And Pamela Parks.
Here.
All right, and our board liaison, that will be Haley Lyons, correct?
Correct. Here.
Hi, Haley.
Hi. Hi, nice to meet you guys.
And board staff, Martin Piccioni.
Martin Piccioni, present by Zoom.
And Andrew Barlow.
Present by Zoom.
All right, and then Darlene is absent today, so
yes,
she had another commitment,
yeah,
so she will not be joining us.
Yep.
I don't see any guests, but are there any guests present by Zoom or at the office?
No office. Nope. No guests present.
The office is closed, so they will have difficulty
on Zoom
finding us. Yes.
Right. Okay. All righty. Okay. So on to the agenda. Let's see. Here we go. I'm assuming everybody reviewed the agenda. Just want to make sure that we're okay to adopt it. I can't remember, Martin. I will never remember this for some reason. Do we need to vote on this agenda?
We do, yes,
Okay.
that's one thing we do need to vote on.
All right, so, I would like to, okay, I don't know how, I don't remember. I'm so sorry. Terrible
okay.
at public meetings.
That's okay. So what we need, Madam Chair, respectfully, is a motion to approve and adopt the agenda as presented unless somebody has any amendments to propose.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion was made by Jonathan and the second was made by Carrie. All right, and we have no public here for public comment. Is anything ever submitted in writing there, Martin, or no?
No,
Okay.
but we need to call for a vote on a motion that is on the table.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to vote on the motion on the table to approve the agenda, approve and adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, the motion is approved. All right. And then no public comment. So we're gonna move on to new business. Did we have an introduction of Haley on here? I thought I saw it and now I'm not seeing it again. On our
Yeah.
agenda.
That's because he fired me.
It's because I
know.
fired her and then unfired her. It's
I know,
just
I could have sworn I saw it on the agenda and now I'm going, wait a minute, I'm not seeing it.
yeah.
I believe it's item number 2 on the agenda.
Oh, we missed, oh, okay, we missed that. I missed that.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, you guys.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Oh, boy. I have no excuses for this one. I'm not even that busy right now. So, but
So-
yes, please,
so
can we, let's introduce Haley.
Do you want me to just talk about myself? I'm happy to do that. It's one of my favorite topics.
Nice.
Just kidding. So I'm Haley Lyons. As you can see, Kim and I are both with the same firm. I've had the pleasure of working with Kim for almost 17 years. I lead our firm's client accounting services group, but was a former auditor and audit partner. And so it made sense for me to jump over to the PROC as the liaison from the board. I started my board service on the complaints committee many years ago and just wrapped up my 3-year term with the board and will continue on the board for a little while longer. So you get me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I just want to, I don't know if this is entirely clear, but I just want to make sure that the prior board liaison did not like leave in disgust, but was actually leaving after an illustrious career with the board. She termed out and we no longer have Nancy Oliver Young. She's no longer a board member. So that's why we had a change in
Right.
liaison. So it was not an issue of unhappiness or the board chair deciding that a change needed to be made. We literally had a vacancy and Haley was willing to step up. So bless you, Haley, and sorry that I confused you with yet another change on yet another committee.
No worries. Martin. This week has been chaos on all fronts. So
All right. Okay, so on to new business. I wanted to first start out with a discussion. We had talked a lot and had it on a future agenda item, a draft report to the board. And John had so nicely provided the California one a long time ago, which I still had my hands on. So I used that for a model and just thought that I would come up with a draft because I really, we talked a little bit last time about the timing and when were we actually going to do this? And, I think we talked a little bit about, should we wait until 2024, but that seems so far away. And I feel like we do have some accomplishments to be proud of and that we should report on. So that's sort of the genesis. I sat down and kind of just drafted a little skeleton that we can chat about, talk about. Hopefully you had a chance to review it. Really just wanted to have an idea if anybody wants to assist by editing or adding or just having a discussion of things we may have missed. And then really just building on it next year for 2024, because as noted, and as we've talked about throughout 2023, really kind of this is a rebuilding year. And so we're really just getting started. So I'm just gonna open up for discussion at this point. Anybody?
I thought it was a nice starting point. I liked your message from the committee or from the chair, kind of how it conveyed. Yeah, kind of like what you just said, our challenges through the year and what we've started and what kind of our process has been and where we anticipate going.
Okay.
So if I may, the one, so I also quite frankly, I loved the initial draft. I have one super tiny piece in there. I think it will be good for us. I checked in reading through it quickly. It will be good, I think, if we can add to the membership the liaison that we have from the board, I think.
And really, we're talking Nancy, right? Of course, because she,
That's
okay,
fine.
because
For
this
the
is the
report,
2023. Any other thoughts on things that we've worked through that were not captured in the report?
Mhm. No, I think
It
it's
seemed
really,
very complete to me, but it was sort of like seemed almost ironic that we have spent so many hours in these meetings trying to figure out what it is that we're supposed to be doing, and then you can summarize it in just a couple of paragraphs.
I know, but it was a really fun process because I was like, okay, I think I'm starting to get this now.
Now.
So it was nice because one of the things we've also had on the agenda for future is just kind of a member manual, right? And so this was sort of an interesting
Starting
to
point for
that,
it, yeah.
because it kind of outlines what we did and what we're responsible for. If you read through the California one ever, you'll see it's so many pages. And so I think that is something that we should put on future agendas for, you know, what of those things that they might be doing might be applicable to us, and where do we want, you know, what do we want to do? But right now we're doing, I think we've got some good plans, and we've done some things to monitor. And I think a really big achievement was getting that clarity around the Oregon program. And I felt like that was probably the biggest achievement that we had this year for sure.
There is one other piece from my perspective, and it actually goes back to something we discussed very early on. And I remember, you know, John actually being pretty passionate around this issue. And it really kind of clicked for me as I was listening to him, because your key original concerns, John, right? And I think it was right in the very first meeting that I had with you in it, was that you felt like, hey, in the past, right, we had become kind of too staff driven, and that it really needed to become kind of a committee driven process, right? That's one of the key messages that I remember, you know, and us was like, oh yeah, you know what, absolutely right. So how do we right size the ship, right? So underneath all of this, and I don't know how much of this we want to air in public, right? But underneath all of this, I feel actually pretty good that I do think we made the transition from the committees driving the boat rather than staff is driving the boat.
yeah, I would agree with that. Thank you, Martin. I think that's accurate. Absolutely. And I also think that, you know, I really like the report that Brenda has drafted here, because it really sets forth what our mission is of oversight, right? I mean, it's really oversight of the peer review process, and really the OSCPA and the Oregon programs. And that's really what we do, is we make sure they're doing their job. So I like that as well. I think that those are the important points of focus for us, is that it be committee driven and that we just follow the statutory outline.
I agree. I thought it was a very comprehensive but concise report. So I thought it's easy to read, and but it still gave all the highlights.
I agree 100%. I think it's fantastic.
Agreed. Yeah, I echo everybody's comments. One general observation going through and taking a step back is, of the, I believe it's 7 PROC members, all have an expiration date in 2024. So I do think we should elevate succession planning and just discussions around filling board seats with the 2024 expiration for all committee members.
Yeah, I do believe. I thought I had, oh, I do. I have that as next of discussion is particularly the ones that are coming up in March. So thank you.
Right, the
for that.
March, yeah, the March sunsets, yep.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so I think, so since we meet quarterly, and I think I'd like to talk a little bit about timing of, submitting that report to the board, just kind of some ideas on that, maybe having everybody, I really want everybody to have a chance to weigh in. I think we're all fairly happy with the way it narrates, what we've done. I don't think we've got any major misses in it. But I would take any kind of, if anybody wants to kind of mark it up with some suggestions so that we can pull it all together into a final document. I'd like to not wait until the next meeting, which I don't think is until May, but love to hear your thoughts about that. I may not be thinking it through thoroughly enough.
So maybe what I can throw out here is at least a process option, right? Because it's not appropriate for me to weigh in on what the committee wants to do substantively, right? But given your concern that, hey, we've got a February 15 board meeting coming up, we don't have another meeting before then, right? Process-wise, there are two options for us, right? One is that the committee can say, you know what, substantively, this is 90% of the way there. We can delegate to you, finish it, the drafting, right? That's one process option that the committee is comfortable with doing that, right? The other process option is that, essentially say, hey, we're going to get together for 15 minutes, because the problem is that if we simply send it out on email and then people start giving comments back, that gets us into a little dicey territory around public meetings law, because then we're creating a substantive document on email and it kind of can be viewed as a discussion on email, right? So that's one process option that's really not on the table. I mean, we could ask people to send me things rather than you, and then I can pass them all on to you, right? But we cannot be exchanging it between the committee members back and forth, and there essentially wouldn't be an opportunity, unless the committee wants that, to review the final product. So I hope that kind of gives you some clarity, you and the committee members some clarity around what the process options here are.
So if we went with process one and, we delegated me to finish it up, is it permissible for me to send out via you a final and get everybody to be okay with that without meeting, or do we have to meet in a public meeting to kind of approve that and vote on it?
So there's two questions here, right? Can you send out a final? The answer is yes. The question is to whom, right? If you send it as the final report of the proc by means of the delegation, that means you give it to me so that I can give it to the board.
Okay.
If you send it out as a, hey, are you okay with this? That's no longer okay under public meetings law, because then everybody substantively weighs in with an answer on yes, I'm okay, or no, I'm not okay. And I'm sorry, I know this is a little bit of.
No, that's okay. Like I said, I mean, it's very helpful for you because I'm not at all well versed in public meeting law, so I want to make sure that we're not doing anything. So, given all that, are we okay to pretty much finalize it today and vote on it so that I can get it to Martin, or should we wait and have another meeting? I'm just, I want to get your guys' feel. I personally would like to not delay and get it off our plates and, give some clarity to what we've done this year to the board. But I also am very happy to hear everybody else's opinions about this. Thoughts?
Well, this is Michael. I just read through it again for about the fifth or sixth time. It looks really good to me. I mean, I'm not coming up with any substantive changes that as far as my input. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree with exactly what Michael said. And I think the only thing is where you've got some questions here, like on the very end, Brenda, where it says, should we include summaries of the firms and actions? No, I don't think that we need to do that. I don't think that the board necessarily needs that information unless it gets elevated to a referral to terminate them from the AICPA peer review program. We don't really have anybody on that fence right now. We may get somebody someday, but we don't have anybody there right now. So no, I kind of like you just to finish it as is and sort of fill in these few blanks here. Now, who was it that attended the 2023 AICPA peer review board meeting where you say need to include observations?
I think that was Kim. Kim,
Okay.
is that true?
I attended the AICPA one in November.
Yeah. And so I think that's the only one we attended because I messed up and got the time wrong.
Okay.
The one before. So I think I was hoping, and we've got that on the agenda. So I was thinking I would take some notes and just, put some observations in there as well in the final. Just because we have observations of just kind of consensus.
Of the other ones.
Yeah. So, so I can add that. That was sort of a holding point for me. And then I agree with you, John. I didn't really want to include those summaries. It was something that was in the California report, very detailed. And, I wasn't sure. And it might be something that we consider for 2024, but I just wanted to throw that out there before I spent too much time on it, get everybody's thoughts on, is this something we think it's important for the 2023 report anyhow, so.
I think as we go, like Nikki said, to the next ones, and we can kind of keep notes as we go, but right now I think it's, probably better just to include the summarized version and not have to include all the detailed observations and that kind of thing, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Great. Let's see. All right, so I just wanted to double check that we've talked about the yellow highlighted areas, all of them. Oh yeah, I can ask somebody about the one number. Okay. Oh yeah, and then that one yellow part in the OSCPA, I have the report. I just ran out of time and I wanted to get this to Martin. So I was just going to summarize the OSCPA's issuing of its own report on and I think we've all had that. We all have a copy of that as well that we had at one of the meetings. So I was just going to summarize that as well.
You would summarize it, or do you want to just do a link to it, or?
Oh, is it that's a good idea?
Because that would be less work for you. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Is it on a public website?
I don't know, but I could. Well, that's a hard question right now because Darlene isn't here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it can be publicly accessed through their website, but maybe we can keep that as an option on the backdrop because I know Darlene will be able to check her email. So we could inquire, and if you want me to, I can get that going right now and just say,
Sure.
is this document accessible as a public link through OSCPA? So that we
what is everybody's thoughts? In some ways I'm thinking this maybe should be a standalone document that you don't have to move off to another document and just summarize it really briefly. But I think the link gives a lot of good information. It's a 3-page report, so 2.5 maybe. Love some feedback on that as well.
I think a link is fine.
Yeah, it must be out there somewhere because I got a copy of it from somewhere and I didn't have Darlene send it to me. So
yeah, I got a copy from somewhere too. I thought it was a meeting, but it's just in my pile of stuff. So I was like, this is a good summary. So okay, yep, we'll work on that.
Yeah, I bet Darlene can give you the link and you could just put that in there. I think that's a great idea.
Awesome. All right. So on the rest of our agenda, we do a little bit about, which RAB meetings we attended. That's been yellow highlighted, and just some of Kim's observations on the AICPA peer review that would need to be added. But what I'm going to say is then it sounds like we could potentially entertain a motion to just approve this, for me to just finish it up, and then get it to Martin for submission to the board. So let's see if I can do this. I would be looking for a motion to approve the draft report as is, with finalization coming for the peer review board meetings and a link to the OSCPA report.
Motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
All
studied
right.
chat box. I just looked really fast in OSCP, and that report is available right there. So I stuck that link in the, in case you want
Thank you, Carrie. All right, the motion passes and that will be the plan. So I will take care of it sometime this week because I'm on vacation next week and get that to you, Martin. All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Next order of business is discussions of the upcoming term expirations. And then also maybe just updating, I got onto the PROC website as I was drafting this. And it's not completely updated. I don't know who's in charge of that, but I was thinking perhaps that would be something that we should look into. But then I also wanted to talk about it because as I did draft this, I noticed every single one of us expires this year. With both Pamela and Carrie expiring in March before our next meeting. And so I wanted to talk about that because I honestly don't know, Martin, it would be really helpful if you could fill me in anyway, all of us probably, on how that works, how many terms we can serve, how we serve the, what does this look like?
Yeah, so it's a great question, right? And so I'm going to start first with how it should work in normal state, right? So we actually have an underlying document, right, that's supposed to govern, how the board handles its committees, right? And in general, we have, these two-year terms, right? That you can get up to 3 times, right? The issue is that with the level of staff turnover that we've had, right, we have essentially duct taped this process. And this isn't just true for PROC, it's true for essentially all of our committees, right? And we've done essentially a lot of kind of extensions and trying to kind of get us through, because kind of reestablishing and refilling new members for committees, we haven't had quite the capacity to do and stay on top of the way we should have. That said, I've had a discussion with the board chair that now that we've kind of gotten through the worst and gotten us through, our laws and rules stuff and getting staff up and running, right, we need to normalize our committees. And one of the things that is in that rubric is exactly what you just talked about. So I now have to actually go to the board both in February and, quite frankly, mostly in June, right? To essentially really look at our committees broadly and essentially work with the board chair by the June board meeting to essentially get us updated on, either extensions, new recruitments, and so on, because I can certainly tell you that unless I get feedback today from this committee otherwise, right, it's usually not a good idea to have everybody turn over on a committee, at the same time. You want to meet, you want to keep some continuity flowing, right? So when I look at these lists, it's going to have to be a combination of, and I quite frankly need some individual feedback from folks, and you don't have to do it in a public meeting on, I know that I have from Michael, a very clear message that I need to find a replacement ASAP, right? Others are clearly kind of at their limits, right? With others, it may just be an issue of, are you willing to continue for another term so I can propose, to the chair that we continue, because we don't want to start off with a completely new PROC, at the beginning of 2025. That would, I don't think, be in the interest of this committee and the board. So I expect there will be a lot of focus on this stuff by the June board meeting and getting us kind of level set better across our committees. I've pretty much done it only right now on a basis of as the need arises. but it needs to become regularized, and we're still about a couple more months away from that.
So I think specifically for me, though, I would like to know, let's pretend everything's normalized, and even though we're all done in 2024, specific to Carrie and Pamela, is it, let's just say they do expire, right? Don't worry about whether we need extensions or anything. How is the process for them to say, yeah, I want to continue? Because this would be their first term, right? And you're
Correct.
saying 2-year terms up to 3 times, so 6 years. So theoretically, they could be on another 4 years until March 2028, I assume.
So if there's a comfort zone in telling me, hey, you're feeling comfortable staying on, there's nothing preventing you, I can actually, because committee appointments are actually not done at the board meeting, but they're reported out at the board meeting. The board has an interest in knowing, what's going on the committees and are we doing what we need to be doing. But essentially what happens on committees with respect to appointments is really the prerogative of the chair. So in essence, so that's kind of the good news, right? There's a lot that I can do in between board meetings to stabilize things, because all I have to do is literally get the chair to either make an appointment or take action, right? I don't have any power individually. I can simply be the conduit, right? But the board chair actually has full ability to act, right? Because it's not the whole board that needs to act. It's literally the board chair that can essentially keep this going. So I can create certainty with respect to the 2 immediate pieces actually relatively quickly.
Okay.
That is actually a pretty simple part, but I know that the needs of this committee go a little bit beyond that.
All right, so would it be fair if we just said, hey, can everybody decide whether they want to continue at the end of their term and communicate that with you? And then maybe we report back in May, because we probably will have to we have to talk about, expanding the committee. I think it's 3 at the minimum, but that's, I think 5's a better number, and what we have now is a great number as well. But I guess I just want to make sure that I don't want people to have to, publicly say, I want to, it's something that they can share with you privately, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
But what would help me, given the timing of this committee today, and because I'd like to kind of keep this moving, and because I know there's urgency and also create some certainty for this committee, it would help me a great deal if folks could do that no later than a week before my February board meeting. So the February board meeting is on the 15th. So if you deduct 7 from that, you get pretty close to the neighborhood of, February 8th. You can all verify that since you're CPAs. So that's kind of, that would help me if I can, bring this into a finish line so that Joe can think about this and we can report out, hey, I intend to make these appointments, and I can hopefully even communicate those out then even before the board meeting.
Okay, so by February 8th, if we can all agree to, let Martin know whether we want to continue or whether something that we're not going to be able to do past our terms, which all expire this year. And then whoever, I don't know all who's eligible. I don't even remember how long I've been on this board, but just personally, privately, we can, and then I'll put it on the May agenda, and we'll know who's going to be continuing, if, and who's not. And then we'll know, what kind of member development do we need to be looking for, right? How many members are we going to need?
Yeah, and Brenda, I was just gonna say, Martin sent all this information out in our August meeting as to who was in what term and everything like that.
Ah.
So, and I was just referring to that. So Carrie and Pamela both are in their first term, so they can serve 2 more terms. You, Kim, and I all came on about the same time. There's a 1-month difference there, but we're all in our second term that ends here this fall, late fall. And so we can all serve another term. However, it looked like Michael and David are on an extension, a 1-year
Yeah.
extension of a 3rd-year term. And so love to have them stay on for the continuity. I mean, clearly, but it's whatever we're allowed to do and whatever they're willing to do. So, it's, the 3 2-year terms, you don't really want people camping on it forever, but, we've got to get volunteers that are knowledgeable and interested to serve on the PROC. And I think that that's the important thing. I'll just speak for myself because I don't really need to be that confidential. I'm not a very confidential person, but I'd certainly like to do one more term, and I will communicate that to Martin, that I would certainly be willing to do one more term. I am 65 this September, so I got to get signed up for Medicare in the summer, and I'm having a grandchild in May. And so I just really have got to that point in life where I think 3 I'll be 3 and done. So I'll just tell you in advance, I'm 99.9% sure I'll be 3 and done. And if that's the statutory formula, that works fine too. I mean, I would serve if there was really, really a compelling need, or maybe I'll serve in another way with the OSCPA or the board. So.
Okay. All right, so we'll report back in May and we'll all get with Martin. And any other comments on that before we move on? Awesome. Okay, so we do have the review and discussion of the consecutive non-pass peer review. I didn't have time really to look at it too closely. I don't know if I would entertain a motion if nobody else had a chance to just defer that into May, since it's pretty recent. Looks like it was December. I don't know, and it looks like it was accepted. I mean, I got that far, so I see it was accepted. So I don't know if we want to take some time to discuss it. If everybody's prepared, it would be great. We can discuss it. I just know for myself, I'm not quite prepared.
Well, I'm prepared to talk about it a little, because this was also at the RAB meeting that I attended in December 15th. And
Okay.
they went through this firm in detail. And so I'll be careful to preserve that confidentiality here. So the consecutive non-pass firm, they had a pass with deficiencies in 2021 was their report. So their 2021 report, and pardon me, here, let me get my check my notes here. Andrew sent us the documentation on the previous and the current. The previous one was a pass with deficiencies, and this recent one was a fail. So the RAB, actually, I can talk about more in my RAB report, really deliberated on this one. There was a lot of discussion there, and there's a lot of concerns. I mean, some of the MFCs were no audit programs. Some of the MFCs were not doing a single audit when a single audit was required. There were just a lot of problems here. And I think if you dive a little bit deeper into the information, the firm had a lot of turnover. They lost some key people. They're just, for lack of a better word, I would just say struggling. I mean, really struggling. I mean, I think earnest. So what's the consequence of all this? And I think you want to refer to the report that Andrew sent us, because if you look at the acceptance letter, the OSCPA acceptance letter, I had it up here. I just wanted to read from that. So they've got to, oh no, this is the previous acceptance letter. Because I was saying, there we go. Okay. So everybody in the firm has to do 3.5 hours of AICPA self-study on risk assessment. They were given a specific course. Then they're going to do a 2-hour on internal control missteps. And then they're going to participate in the 10-hour AICPA advanced topics in a single audit. They have to hire an outside party to perform pre-issuance reviews of reports, financial statements for their next single audit, issued subsequent to the peer review and completion of the CPE. They have to be approved. That person will have to be approved by the committee. And then they actually have to have an outside party acceptable to the committee to provide a written report on the firm's monitoring program. So just to kind of flesh that out, you have a peer review every 3 years. In the intervening 2 years, you do your own firm internal monitoring. And basically what the committee was saying is saying, hey, you had to pass with deficiencies last time, you had to fail this time. Obviously, monitoring isn't working. So now they're going to get help with pre-issuance review, and they're going to get help with monitoring. So, but if they comply with all of those requirements from the review oversight board or the AICPA or CPA peer review program, they still continue doing audit work, right? I mean, they still go on their merry way. They still continue doing audit work. There was a thing that was the thing that was most singularly bothersome to me was a comment in there that they had lost a key employee that was like the audit manager. I think this person wasn't a partner, but they were the audit manager. Yet they accepted 11 new audit engagements when they were already understaffed, and that's kind of one of the key things that we go to in our profession is, you don't take on stuff you can't do. Right. And I don't really know the rest of the circumstances of that. But that being said, if they comply with everything with this fail and have another peer review and fail, then the consequence, and it says it in the letter and everybody on the committee can read that, it's the December 15th, 2023 letter. They said, if your firm receives a pass with deficiencies or fail on your next peer review, it's the last condition there, the committee may refer to the matter to the AICPA peer review board to consider whether hearing should be held for the firm's failure to cooperate with the administering entity. So that's kind of where they're at. They get another strike here, so to speak, on this one, and those are the conditions imposed. They didn't have 2 consecutive fails. They had a pass with deficiency and they had a fail. But if they have another fail, then they should get a referral. And I think that they really should have, my opinion is they really should have the hearing. That should be what comes out of another fail. I mean, they had 10 MFCs, most of which either got combined or elevated to FFCs. That's 10 MFCs in matters for further consideration in their peer review. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's just, to me, that's a ton of red flags when you go from pass with deficiency to a fail. And the problems accelerate, and the fact that it's single audit makes me real nervous.
So there's and just from the outside looking in, Brenda, I would guess there's a leadership problem. There's, tone at the top, there's a leadership problem within the firm. And then underneath that, there's a staffing problem. And that's just going to happen with small firms. I mean, things change, people turn over. And just because you've got this shingle with your history of doing audits and stuff like that, if you lose the people that made that all work, then you have problems.
In my brief, glance through it before the meeting, my first initial impression was this is a firm that should not be doing single audits. That's my first impression. I don't know what kind of, recommendation we can make. I mean, I'm just kind of like, why is this firm doing single audits? That's the highest level of, well, and I just happen to be a government auditor. I don't know if anybody else here is as well. So maybe it's just me reacting to that, just knowing what it takes to do a single audit and the education and expertise that you really have to have. I was pretty appalled by the letter, just my really brief read through, because that we're talking about federal grant money. We're talking about, huge amounts of money running through that we're trying to make sure people are accountable, municipal districts are accountable for. So that was scary to me. Did they discuss that at all at the RAB? Just the fact that it's such a higher level of expertise and knowledge needed?
I think more the concern was that just the firm had not taken adequate steps to make sure that people were sufficiently trained or sufficiently experienced to do the work. I think that was more the concern. I think there's also this sort of idea that, well, we'll let you get back on the horse and see if you can do it. You know what you've got to do. And, you know, if you do the training, if you do the pre-issuance review, if you have somebody come in and do the oversight on your firm internal inspection, then maybe you'll get there. I mean, but I think if you read between the lines to that acceptance letter from the OSCPA dated December 15th, you'll see this is probably its last stance.
Hmm.
If they can't, they're going to get referred. I mean, they have to be referred. I mean, a consecutive fail, they're going to have to be referred. But I agree with you. I don't know what else there could be done there. What happens on the other side of it is if there's a referral or a complaint by one of the auditees or some party that's placing reliance on the audit reports to our complaints committee, and then that's a different thing that's on an incident basis where they say, hey, this audit was deficient and damage to the public interest occurred because of it. That's going to be a different chain of events than what we do with peer review and what the RAB does. So far, I don't think they have any complaints like that are pending. And maybe you could speak to that, Martin.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, and I was just making sure I really read that, it's something about they had to recall an audit report.
Yeah, they had to recall and reissue one.
Yeah.
Because it was deficient enough that it needed to be reissued.
So there were two, it looked like. They had to recall an audit report for a school district, and then something about a water district. Oh, that maybe a single audit wasn't performed and maybe needed to be performed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So so I can make one process clarification, and I do have a process question, and that one I think is actually equally to John and to Haley. So the clarification can I make in a direct response to John's question, right? I will not be permitted in a public meeting to discuss, potential complaint records, whether it's on a firm or an individual licensee. So I'm just not permitted to go there. And this is not meant to suggest that there would be something that I could talk about with respect to that particular firm. I'm not allowed to. The question that I have is, you got my attention, John, when you read what seemed to be a direct reading from what the consequence would be that's in that letter. Because the words that you used is that the consequence would be a, quote, failure to cooperate with the process, with the process, right? And that got my attention for the following reason, right? On a complaint side, which is, Haley, this is in part addressed to you, right? The world that I live in on the complaint side of the board is that the only time we ever go after for failure to cooperate is they basically are not responding to our inquiries, right? And here it seems like this is a different animal, where that's like the only option in the peer review, that you can refer someone for failure to cooperate, but that it incorporates what we normally deal with separately on the complaint side. Because on the complaint side, hey, you violated this rule or you didn't adhere to that standard, and we never really use the cooperate unless they don't engage with our process, right? But here that seems really different. Is that essentially the only option they have if they have a concern, is to use that language of failure to cooperate with the entity?
Yes. But the receiving a consecutive pass with deficiencies would be considered, the way that this is laid out, you can read the paragraph yourself, that would be considered to be evidence of failure to cooperate, right? If you fail again, pass with deficiencies or fail report on your next peer review. So they're even elevated. If they receive a pass with deficiencies, the RAB may review them to the AICPA peer review board to have them terminated from the peer review program. So those are really the alternatives. There is to terminate them from the peer review program, and then what happens, right? They're terminated from that peer review program. They can't get peer review then in the state of Oregon, assuming that this second Oregon peer review, Oregon State peer review thing gets subsumed into the AICPA program. So then I think they would have some issues with being able to actually take on engagements, because I think isn't it a requirement? I mean, Brenda, it's been a while since my Yellow Book years, but isn't it a requirement that you have peer review and that you provide it to your client upon engagement acceptance?
Yeah, for governmental audit standards, right? So Yellow Book, single audit. If you're just doing a municipality, I don't think that's the case.
But that's
But
different, because
it's
then
that-
you'd have to have a muni auditor's license here in
Mhm.
Oregon, which would be, you would be subject to all of those standards and that
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think that I'm not sure you can continue to do Yellow Book without a peer review.
You can't,
Yeah.
or you shouldn't, but yeah. Yeah, I don't, yeah, definitely for the GAGAS audits, right? So,
Yeah.
but I don't think there's anything in Secretary of State. Now, of course, I just don't know. That'd be something I'd have to look up, but
Yeah.
it
Well,
says
then
you have to have a peer review for a municipal license. I just don't know. We could have to.
yeah,
look
I don't know the answer to that either.
Yeah, either do
That's
I.
never worked in that area. So if you did that, let's say that well, and I've seen this before, because I would read the disciplinary committee's minutes back when they used to be paper minutes. I can't stand to listen to the recordings, but I listened to them, or I'd read them, and there was actually a firm that I was familiar with that they were sanctioned by the board because they had proposed to do a municipal audit. They sent an engagement letter to a client to do a municipal audit, and no one in the firm had a current municipal auditor's license, right? So they were sanctioned for that. Yeah, you can get it. That becomes a disciplinary matter for the committee and for the board. They were disciplined for it. I mean, they didn't end up not taking the engagement or something like that, or then they got their act squared away, and somebody got their muni auditor's license or got their license reinstated, their muni auditor's license. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's a big concern. I think just in what the RAB considered, I think with this is, that you just basically say you've got to have a corrective action plan and you have to fulfill it. And if you don't fulfill it, then this is the consequence. So short of something coming up the complaint side, and go ahead.
I have a question. Well, two things. One, if you are performing any sort of test work in Oregon, you have to be registered in a peer review program. So yes, Yellow Book, muni auditors definitely comply, have to comply. The other thing that, that John, or that you just started to bring up is about, and it's kind of got my wheels turning, is about the complaint side. The board office has several things that come through on registrations or on, other matters that become submitted to the complaints committee. And what's the guidance or the best practices on when something pops up like this that rises to the level of we need to jump in? Because what I'm hearing is, particularly with respect to this firm, what gives me pause, and obviously I'm very new to this committee and thinking through this, but what gives me pause is that really it's like a 9-year span of crappy auditing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that 9 years, like, wow, that is so long. And so at what point, when someone has a fail, I get passed with deficiency, okay, and then you fail, at what point do we say we have a problem with exercising due professional care?
Yeah,
I think that was also, thank you. That was also my question, because I'm not sure what, and how it relates to our role is that, wow, I mean, pass with deficiency to a fail. And then, like I said, I really didn't read the first one, so I don't know how severe it was. I scanned the second one, saw lots and lots of words there, like lots and lots of findings that seemed pretty significant. And I was like, why is it 9 years? Why isn't it 6 years? What, I just don't understand maybe the process of, at what point does it get so egregious that, and is that 9 years? Is it 3 peer reviews? Is that a general rule? Or is that just something that is happening here? I just don't know.
well, I think the issue is that the first one was a pass with deficiencies, right? So it says, hey, you know, you're doing okay, but you've got some you had some fairly serious issues that you need to address, but we think that you've got, you know, big picture, you know, you probably can make it, right? A fail says that everything's fallen apart so bad that it's just your system of you know, your system of engagement quality control isn't functioning, right? I mean, that's what the fail means, is your system doesn't function. Pass with deficiency says it's functioning and it can probably be fixed, right? So then the problem when you look at it from the procedural standpoint is okay, well, the pass with deficiencies, what happens with the pass with deficiencies? You get your corrective action plan, you correspond back and forth with the RAB, and you get that accepted, and then your peer review reports gets accepted, and then you just get to where the little scarlet letter that no one sees except for wonks like us that says, oh, I have a pass with deficiencies, right? And you go on your merry way, right? And then what happens if you get a fail? Well, I mean, you got to send that fail report on your Yellow Book clients because you have a fail report, right? So you have to provide your most recent peer review report to your clients, and it says you failed. Are they gonna, I mean, some of these small municipalities, special districts, small school districts in rural areas, are they gonna really get in a twist about that? I mean, they probably care more about what you're gonna charge them and what they have to put in their budget, right? So that's really the issue. Pass with deficiencies, you know, fail following a pass with deficiencies. I agree with you. I mean, it looks like not only did the plane not land on the carrier deck, but it crashed and burned when it got there, right? So that looks very bad. But on the other hand, they do have 3 years to straighten it out. And as long as they comply with the RAB's requirements, with the outside quality control review and the outside monitoring, right, in their interim years, and everybody does their continuing education, they have to say, well, we've got to give you a chance.
Yeah, and I think that's my question is they, I remember, I think the only time we've seen this was in the first batch of them, and they left the program, the pass and then fail. And so this is a new one to me, thinking, wow, we're going to let this go another 3 years when the corrective action plan for the pass with deficiency clearly didn't address the issue and they got worse.
Yeah.
Well, they
Yeah.
had single audit issues both years. I mean, they had non-conforming audits in the first year for single audits, and then they have single audit the next year and required to have 24 hours of CPE in single audits. I don't understand that either.
Yeah, so I think that's what's getting to me really is it, and it, like I said, I didn't have a ton of time, but just briefly scanning it.
Mhm.
I think I saw something that said maybe they hired somebody and that person left in the first. But I'm just thinking, when you know that things are so serious that you did not pass your peer review, it surprises me that more work had not been done in the meantime. It concerns me a lot that you said, and I don't know that that's even in here, just sharing that they took on more clients.
Yeah,
So-
well, you're all pretty young to remember some of the characters of the Oregon public accounting industry, and you know, there's some old names that I remember really well of people that, you know, they're just like the Terminator. I mean, nothing stops them, right, until they get stopped cold, right? And they really, and the regulatory hammer has to come down on them. And unfortunately, the regulatory hammer doesn't come down on peer review for, well, potentially 6 years, let's say, because we're talking about consecutive fail ratings, right? They get a fail rating, they've got 3 years to straighten it out. They've got 2 consecutive fail ratings, but just going downhill from a pass with deficiencies to a fail doesn't automatically generate the referral. And I think that that's your concern. But I'm with you. I mean, I would be absolutely like, if it were me and my firm, I would say, you know what, I don't need this. I don't need this anymore. I say that a lot of times when new FASB standards come out, like 842 and 606. Go,
Ditto.
I don't need this anymore, right? You know, I got an MFC on one of our peer reviews when we were doing Yellow Book because I didn't have non-certified staff that were just doing grunt work on the audits do their 24 hours of required CPE, right? I mean, I didn't have the mechanism for monitoring that. We have them come in and help on something. It's like, hey, if they touched the file and signed off work papers, they were supposed to have 24 hours of required CPE under gas, which you know well, probably better than I know, right? So you know, it's easy to make those mistakes, but usually you go to a firm like me and I'm like, oh man, that'll never happen again, right? I mean, I monitor that. We do the EBP and I monitor people's CPE compliance just for the audit quality center. It's 8 hours every 3 years, and we do more than that, you know, and nobody can touch an engagement until they've had their 8 hours. It doesn't matter how green they are coming in off the streets, and they've been pretty
Right.
green. So
And Martin, I think you had something to offer as well.
Yeah, and obviously I can't weigh in on a substantive case or have any substantive opinions there, but contextually, in terms of the issues that have been raised by John and by Haley, I want to add a couple things contextually in terms of both options going forward and a bit of the context around this, right? So let's start first with the issue that was raised around, oh my goodness, you know, we're now at the 6-year mark. This is going to be 9 years, and then there's this referral, right? So first of all, at the risk of stating the obvious, that's built into the structure of the national peer review program,
Okay.
right? It's not an Oregon specific issue, right? So I want to just provide, and I'm going to use, John, with your permission, your approach to the kind of Terminator types of old, right? Essentially, the issue here is 9 years much too long to say, you know, when is it time to say hasta la vista, baby, right? To a firm saying you should no longer be doing audits, right? Or this type of work. It actually is worse than that. Okay, so I hate to say this in a public meeting, right? But think about this. 9 years is only the point in time where that referral to AICPA would occur, right? Which means that an AICPA doesn't regulate any license, right? Which means that the actual connect time after that 9-year point is then an entry where a regulatory board can then take action and say, based on that referral, you're opening up our own complaint file, and we have to essentially then, so you could be looking at not just 9 years, but effectively 10, 11
Yeah.
years before there's actually an outcome, right? And that is exceptionally painful. So good news next, right? Since I just probably depressed the hell out of everybody. You know, what you're struggling with here with this, oh my goodness, we already know a lot at 6-year stage right now that is of concern, you know, whether it was at the RAB or to this committee, right? What can we do earlier? Number one, you're not alone, right? There are folks that are worried about this. So substantively, what I can suggest, not with respect to this particular case, because that's out of my purview, but with respect to just process option, is if the committee wants to have a serious discussion about what are our options to do something at the 6-year point rather than waiting until the 9-year point. And I know, Haley, from your comments, that is something that's on your mind as well, right? What I'd like to do, with your permission, if you're on board with that, is I want to schedule that as a separate item for our next meeting and make sure we have board counsel there, because this is pretty complex stuff in terms of this interrelationship between PROC and between PROC and BOAC, right? And how that works. And I don't think we should have a really in-depth discussion if we are interested in this without having our counsel at the table. So that would be my suggestion on this. The last piece I want to add to this is that, and again, I'll be careful how I phrase this because all of this is a public meeting, right? I have become very aware over time, both in my initial 2012-17 time and my time since, that boards of accountancy on the regulatory side vary to some degree in terms of how active boards are in terms of their procs and their engagement in this, 6-9 year window, right? There are some, and quite frankly, my impressions at this point, most that are super hands-off and are basically saying, let the peer review process play its way out fully before we engage, right? There are some others who are essentially taking a step that I would say is kind of a little bit of like a march in lockstep, where essentially if they become aware that a letter has been sent out, like the one you just mentioned, John, in December from OSCPA, and they will choose to send out an accompanying letter from the board to say, hey, we're watching this, please make sure that you respond and engage in this process and get this cleaned up kind of as an additional thing. So that's, I know that there are some who take that extra step of essentially lockstepping it a little bit with these types of communications, right? So we could discuss that as an option if we want to go there. I'm not super comfortable potentially getting into other options, but I do want to be transparent that there is quite a degree of variability in terms of what happens at the regulatory states between different jurisdictions in terms of how they engage or not with follow-ups to what happens in peer review.
Yeah, so thank you, Martin. That is helpful. I think for me, it's more for me, this is me personally, is I think maybe I want reassurance that the RAB is following this. So all those things that have to happen, is somebody monitoring that they do? Because quite frankly, there are not enough government auditors out there. So you want this firm to be successful. You just do. Because the clients need the work done. But I just, you also want the clients to have the work done appropriately. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about, I guess I don't know enough about the monitoring system or what part we might play in that. I think I'm still very unclear in the interplay of, how do we make sure that our oversight is making sure that for example, the pre-issuance review, to me, that's powerful because that stops something from happening that could be a deficient audit, right? That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So how do we know that has happened?
So what happens with this process is once the OSCPA RAB has accepted their report, and the firm has sent an acknowledgement letter saying, yes, they've sent an acknowledgement letter earlier saying, hey, we accept all these conditions, here's what we're going to do. And so this acceptance letter confirms that, says this is your contract, this is your agreement with the board, you're going to do all these things. So then what happens is they will submit, they have their roster of staff and they will submit the CPE's been performed and send copies of the certificates to the RAB, right? And so we can ask Darlene probably at the next meeting, how that stuff is tracked and indexed. But I know that they have to do that. And then they have to hire the engagement quality control reviewer for their next single audit. And then they have to inform the OSCPA RAB who that person is, so that the RAB can be satisfied that they're qualified. And then when the engagement's done. I don't know, and this is a question for Darlene, to what extent that quality control reviewer would then report back to OSCPA and say everything went fine, right? Or no, I'm never working with these people again, right? Because it's one, I mean, the sentence is one quality control review on their next single audit, right? So let's say they get through that one with flying colors, then they can do a whole bunch of single audits and they can be, and one of the issues here was not even knowing when a single audit was required.
Yeah.
Right? That was one of the MOCs, right? So it's a little bit problematic there. And then the last thing on the monitoring is, again, they have to report to OSCPA RAB who they've hired to do the monitoring. So there's 2 monitorings now, 1 year from now and 1 2 years from now. The 2 monitorings have to be done. They have to inform the RAB who they've hired to do the monitoring, if it's the same person. But again, that's a question for Darlene in terms of what sort of report do they get back that the monitoring's been performed. This person is coming in and doing their firm internal monitoring, but they're not issuing a peer review report or an opinion. So I think they're going to be a little bit careful in terms of saying, well, yeah, everything looks great, because they're not really doing enough work to opine on that, but they are performing, and they can say, hey, this is the monitoring program and I perform the steps. I think that's what they can say. So these are some questions that we should also maybe in an additional item for our next for our next meeting in May is add those as questions to Darlene on the monitoring of the compliance on these. And just say, have her tell us what they do, or maybe we could get a guest from the RAB to come and say, this is what we do. You know, get Harry or Richard or one of the guys that's really been leading the RAB for the last few years come and say, this is what we do. I mean, I could call Harry and ask him, you know, and but I mean, I think it would be better to come not secondhand. So
Yeah.
Harry's our peer reviewer, incidentally, full disclosure. So
Yeah, okay, so I haven't, does anybody have any other comments? John and I have been kind of hogging the conversation. Does anybody have any other comments or thoughts? I guess my inclination is we review this again in May, perhaps getting some information about how this is monitored so that we, and I'm just also curious about our, you know, role in this traditionally, like, would we, or should we, or could we ever refer something to the board that we were uncomfortable with the RAB's actions, right? I'm not even 100% sure of that. So any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think, like, to come to Martin's point about, you know, these are kind of the industry-wide approved plan of actions. But I'm with you and John. I'm not super comfortable that we give these people, you know, 10 to 12 years to hang themselves, harming the public in that amount of time when we can see it coming at year 6 that it's not going well. So I'm with you. I'm not quite sure what our role is, of if that's, you know, what is pre-approved and industry standard, you know, is it our role to disagree with that or go, you know, go off the rails? Or are we failing to do our oversight by just letting it ride for another 6 years?
Yeah, I
And I think,
completely
a little more guidance on to where that goes and what our responsibility is would be helpful.
completely agree with that, Kim, and what everybody else said. You know, do we have the ability to expedite to a hearing or some sort of action item if we work in tandem with the RAB to see whether or not they have lived up to all of those promises that were in the acceptance letter, the response letter that said we will do X within 30 days of the October 31st letter, which is already passed, you know, do Y by June 30th, 2024, and Z by September 30th, 2024. We need to make sure somebody's monitoring those very timely. And if those aren't occurring and they're not living up to that, can we then have the ability to expedite some sort of hearing or action item?
Yeah.
In a timely fashion, rather than waiting 2 to 3 more years.
That's a really good summary of, I think, what we're all struggling with.
I think that, yeah, so I was just sitting back listening. I that hit on everything I was thinking as well. So that's what's really important to me. So I echo what everybody shared.
Okay, so I'm thinking that perhaps we might, maybe Martin, you and I could work together to possibly get a member of the RAB to our next meeting and then just, you know, find out about the monitoring. I don't know how to find out about our responsibilities. I don't know if a Board of Accountancy member, guest member, I just don't know. That part I don't know, but I do like the idea of having somebody from the RAB maybe possibly giving us some information about how they monitor and what that process looks like, or if Darlene can give us some insight into that.
yeah, I would recommend, why don't we send those questions to Darlene in advance of the meeting and have her come prepared to talk about those, you know, about the monitoring process. When a firm agrees to, you know, they basically stipulate that they're going to undertake these tasks. If she could tell us how that monitoring works, and we could use this example, you know, the failed peer review from the December 15th meeting, will identify it that way, right? And she could come in and say, yeah, this is, and it'd be nice to just have a little progress report. This is what they've done. Yeah, they've turned in all their CPE. They've done a single audit and had the engagement quality control review. But it would really be nice. I think we should let her know so that she can come prepared to speak to those points.
Well, and to talk about having a guest from the Board of Accountancy, that's me, I
Yeah.
think. And so I think what Martin indicated that we'll talk about in our February board meeting is, you know, what direction from the board do we want to provide to this committee, so we do have a better, more clear understanding about what our charge is and what, you know, how we can weigh in, but we really need to include our legal counsel in those decisions because of the overlap that you talked about. So I think we'll have more direction on it in when we meet in May.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so I think that we can probably move on from that. Are we all okay with that? How much time do we have left in this meeting? Oh, here we go. I turned my counter on. It looks like, huh. It says it has an hour and 19 minutes. That can't be true.
By my count, 43 minutes.
Okay. All right, so let's get going here.
German Chimpel says 42 minutes and 35 seconds.
So, RAB meeting report, John, do you have anything to add over what you kind of talked about? Because I know they talked about this one particularly.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this because I think we've already hit most of the high points on the one that was of concern. I just want to say that I think these things were very interesting and valuable to attend, even for an old guy like me that's been in A&A for years and done a bunch of different things. It was really, really valuable. Plus, you get 2 hours of CPE credit for attending the RAB meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you get 2 hours of CPE credit, so it's not you can put it down to CPE time at work and everything. But it was super interesting, and really, what I would say is I think everybody should do it because you'll come away with an understanding that the RAB sits like a council and they go through and they question each other. They go, really? Do you think that's enough, or is that really the appropriate? Is that really the appropriate remedial action that they should take? What about this? What about that? And so there really was a good value in the deliberation, and really smart people, you know, these peer reviewers that really focus in on these areas saying, well, will that accomplish it? If we have them do this, will that accomplish it? I was super impressed by the thoughtfulness. So that's why I encourage, we should rotate every member of our PROC onto one of these RAB meetings, and then it makes these discussions go very quickly, I think, when we understand how they approach things and how they do things. So having said that, this one was interesting. There was 9. They had 6 systems reviews, 5 with pass ratings. There was the one with the fail rating, which we've discussed, and we won't go into that anymore. The 5 with pass ratings, 4 of those had 1 MFC, and 2 of those had 1 FFC. So the MFCs will then get elevated to a finding for further consideration if it warrants that under the peer review standards. And in looking through those MFCs and listening to the board deliberate, it's kind of like everybody makes mistakes, right? You could miss something on every engagement. There was nothing, you know, some of them had to do with new disclosures, new report verbiage. I don't think there was anything there that would give any member of this committee or somebody like you, Brenda, that's done a lot of yellow book audits, any heart attack or any concern for consideration. Go, yeah, I almost did that once, or I did that once and it didn't get selected on peer review, and I found it later. Right? You know, I mean, we've all had those moments, right? The engagement reviews, they had 2 with pass ratings, but then there are quite a few more MFCs and FFCs. Each had 3 MFCs, each of those 3 were then elevated to 2 FFCs, and 1 had a pass with deficiencies rating. It had 6 MFCs. On those, you know, basically missing, you know, it's like the not completely meeting the new disclosure requirements under ASC 606 or 842, the LISA standard, right? Just, you know, new standards and we missed it. And I think you're going to see this a lot more with the engagement reviews, because these people are not auditors, but they're trying to keep at least one oar in the water on doing A&A work. You know, things like income tax basis compilation report, they incorrectly indicated the statement of cash that flows was an omission or departure from, you know, income tax basis. And it's sort of like, that's just somebody not thinking, right? Not using the right model report language. So those things, I think, for the most part, were fairly small. with the one that had the pass with deficiencies rating and the 6 MFCs, you know, you just read that, and I would go all the way back into the past to 1991 when I joined a certain firm that will remain unnamed. And I said, okay, so if you're going to have to do, if you're going to do, you know, any kind of ANA work at all, you're going to have to actually buy a copy of AICPA professional standards and have it in the firm. And you're going to actually have to buy a current copy of FASB standards, because these are paper books in the old days, and have that at the firm. And oh, by the way, you might want to buy some of these basic PPC guides to preparing financial statements and other things. And so as I'm reading this peer review, I'm going, yeah, this firm can do it. They just need to get somebody to be serious and champion the ANA stuff, you know, and they will come along fine. There wasn't any, you know, mostly just missing disclosures, you know, not, you know, really kind of, oh, I didn't know that that was an issue sort of thing, right? So I think that that's one where the peer review system really works well. That's somebody that can either elevate their game, or they can go, oh my gosh, that was such a horrible experience. I'm just not going to do compilations and reviews anymore. So anyway, good meeting. What again, just want to emphasize how important I think it is for all of us to rotate through these meetings. I'm happy to attend other ones, but I would rather see somebody who hasn't been to one go before I go back. I'd like everybody to get a chance.
Yeah, that's great. I think we have an agenda item later on.
I
Pamela?
tried to attend the November meeting, but the time, they
Yeah.
apparently don't recognize daylight savings time.
I saw that you sent me that email, which I appreciate, but it wasn't, I still didn't quite understand that. So it's like, that was interesting. So. All right. So Kim, you're up. AICPA peer review meeting.
And my report won't be quite as robust as John's. I did attend the November meeting, and I think it was scheduled for 2 hours, but I think it lasted maybe 35 minutes. In that regard, it was a pretty brief meeting on their end. You know, you could tell by listening to them talk, they're very, you know, well-versed in all peer review things and very up to speed on all things in the industry. The bulk of the meeting was the discussion of the new exposure draft. It's the proposed peer review standards update number 2. And that really is taking the peer review standards and updating them for the new quality management standards. And so that was, I think, issued in November. The comment period ends May 31st of 24. And then they'll, you know, deal with those comments and go from there. But really, you know, just kind of the quality management standards are an overhaul to that whole process and how that we go about doing peer reviews and some of that. And so, you know, talking about the interplay and kind of how the proposal was put together and some of the thoughts behind that. So it was an interesting meeting in that regard. They gave a couple of other reports on kind of things that are on their agenda. Nothing that I would say is exceptionally relevant to us and our committee. But that was pretty much the gist of the meeting.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Of course.
I missed it. I don't understand time differences, I guess. So
Well, it was one of those, they didn't publish the time until right before the meeting, and maybe it's a standard afternoon time. And I, you know, being the first one, I didn't realize that, but until the agenda came out, I was like, it wasn't posted at the time. So
I was just working away, and then I, you know, tried to join and it said the meeting was over.
It was already over.
Darn it. So next time. Okay, so I also want to talk a bit about developing a prop calendar with just some of those, really just for the meetings that we probably as members are going to be wanting to attend. I sent a draft to all of you. It's just something I thought that we could keep internally just so that we know what's coming up. And I tried to put as many dates on there as I could. So just to say, you know, who's attending what, right? That's kind of how I did it. And really just internal, like I said, nothing formal. But I'm wondering if anybody had any ideas of things that maybe we would want to add to those. Because I think what I have on there is, you know, the RAB meetings, the AICPA meetings, our meetings, and anything else of importance. You know, we might want to put the Board of Accounting meetings on so that we know when they are. So any thoughts on that?
I think another thing that might not be bad, I don't know if this calendar is quite the right spot, but kind of as we were talking about reviewing members' terms,
Good
might
idea.
not be bad just to put that on there, you know, every May meeting or
Like
kind of
the
whenever we
term
decide that's
expiration
appropriate.
dates. Any other thoughts from anybody who took a look at it? I just find myself being a visual person, just saying, oh, okay, I know there's a RAB meeting coming up next month. Something that we could probably review every meeting and just say, you know, who's coming up for the next, you know, RAB meeting or whatever. So, that was sort of what I was hoping that we could, you know, just use it as a visual aid to refer to as we have our quarterly meetings. So moving on to upcoming RAB meetings. We do have 3 confirmed meetings coming up. One is really soon, January 26th. One is February 23rd, and one is March 22nd. So I wanted to see if we had any volunteers for those 3, which are confirmed. The rest of them haven't been approved yet. I think they've got a different fiscal year. So the rest of them haven't been approved, but they are, you know, tentatively scheduled. So any takers on the upcoming 3 that are confirmed?
Maybe I missed this, but do we know what time they're at those days?
You know, I don't know. Do you know, Martin?
I actually do not. John, when was your
Which
schedule?
one is- yeah.
Yeah, they're always the same time. Like, bear with me. I'll look at my calendar and I'll figure that out here.
Okay, good.
Because that's what my hope would be, is that they all have like that same schedule on any one of those given days, so we can lean on your, since Darlene isn't here, we can lean on your calendar there, John.
Yeah, it was the December one was 9 a.m. And then let me look at I think the June one was the same here. Oops. Scroll too fast.
And then while you're looking, do you know how long they normally last?
The June one was 10 a.m. So it looks like they're morning meetings.
I had volunteered to do the February one.
That's Carrie.
It's Carrie.
This is David. This is David Sekulas. I could go to the January 26th.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll let Martin, are you okay letting Darlene know that? Because I think what she needs is to get them information.
Yes, so January 26th is David. And then
David, Carrie's February. Anybody interested in March? Well, let's check in my schedule. What
John,
day?
she's checking. How long do these RAB meetings normally last, roughly?
This one was
Mine was a couple hours, and
Yeah.
there's times that you're excused because they're talking about the Hawaii program. So I just turned my camera off and worked, and then came back in.
Yeah, and I would, and they didn't have any of those, so it was 2 hours. I'm pretty sure we were definitely done before lunch. In fact, I could tell you probably exactly.
Okay, if nobody else can, I believe I can do March 22nd. So any takers for March? So we have, I'm happy to do it again.
Oh, it was an hour and a half. It was over at 10:35.
And I can't remember if that's just my oversight on the calendar or if Darlene didn't give me the time. That I don't know if I just didn't put it on there, but on the calendar that we're gonna try to use as our visual aid, I'll make sure that we put times on there.
Yeah, I don't think she gave you, I don't think she gave you times. I didn't have
Okay.
times, yeah. But
Yeah, only thing I have is dates.
Well, that's great. Thank you, all of you. I think you'll find it very valuable.
I will do that
And-
email right now so it doesn't get caught in a maelstrom called my desk.
And then moving on, we've got 4 sessions for AICPA, those open sessions that I found that were on Martin's schedule for us. We've got February, May, September, and November 6th. So I thought maybe if we could dial in the first 2. And if I'm happy to take one of those, especially since I missed one. I'm just trying to see when. Does anybody have any specific date that they would like to attend that or interested in attending that?
I can take May 15th.
Okay, and that is Pamela, right?
Yes.
Thank you. When I look down, I can't see who's talking. Sorry. Okay, Pamela, May. So I can do February if nobody else wants to. I think I'm gonna be around and I'm gonna remember that they're Eastern time so that I can actually make it.
Yeah, if you have any, I haven't been to one yet, so if you have any conflict, Brenda, just let me know and I'll do
Okay,
it.
do you wanna, let's see, do you want to? I know it sounds like you have a pretty busy summer. If you want to take that one, I can take the one after May.
That'd be great.
If you'd like to do that. Okay, so we'll put John in for February. And then let me just make sure that I don't have any. Oh, it's September 11th. Okay, I don't think I have anything going on September 11th. Let's see. So I can take the September one. And is anybody, I do have an unconfirmed time for April on the RAB, since we're not meeting until May. Does anybody have April availability? Let me just look and see. Martin, do you have that handy?
I will I'm looking right now for the email.
Sorry, yeah, because I'm looking on my emails and I can't. I'm just thinking maybe if we can get an April, even though it's not 100% confirmed, just a tentative. Since we're not meeting till May.
There's none in April.
Okay, good.
There's none in
We don't have to
April.
worry about April. Okay, good. So
what we
just
may
these
wanna do, though-
3, then I think that gets us going through May.
Yeah, there is a RAB meeting on May 17. That's a tentative date, so we may want to talk about that one now, because if we bring it up at the May proc, that may not work so well.
Okay, when's our prop meeting in May? I know we have a May meeting.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking.
Oh, it's
right-
on the 7th.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, that's not a whole lot of time, so I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. So May 17th, is anybody interested in doing and just, kind of pre-scheduling for the tentative date of May 17th for the RAB?
I can probably tentatively do that.
I was gonna say I can take that one or June, so maybe we'll just finalize that in at the meeting.
Okay, good. So I'll put Pamela down tentatively and that'll take us through to our next meeting. So. Okay. And then. Okay, really after that, the main thing I had was just, I kind of did a list of, development of future agenda items. One other thing that is sort of ongoing is creating an introduction document for new members, outlining the purposes and responsibilities. I think everybody's going into their busy seasons. Is that true? I'm a little off because I do governmental accounting and I get busy in the fall. But I'm thinking that might be something that we could all tackle, maybe put it as a discussion item on our May agenda. And, just maybe take pieces of it. Just so that especially as we're talking about bringing on new members, it would be really nice if they had something to kind of refer to. So this can be I feel a lot better this year, but I made my very first year on this committee, I was 100% lost. Not 99%, but just 100%. So
Well,
um,
I think we could start by giving them your report to the board, Brenda, because
yeah,
that
that's
says,
true.
this is who we are and this is what we do.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, I lifted that out of the OAR, honestly, most of that. So but yeah, so I thought that we could maybe start thinking about that in May after everybody's somewhat through everybody's normal busy seasons. And then also just a future is just development of our annual report if we want to add things or just kind of build on it as we increase our activities during 2024. Anybody else have any business that, maybe we think we haven't really talked about what we might need to do? Like, we're doing the meetings and we're reviewing the non-consecutive fail and pass with deficiencies. Has anything occurred to anybody that we should put on as a future development item of activities that we haven't been taking on?
The
Brenda,
main
I
thing,
should probably already know this, but what's the timing of the AIC? I think it's the AICPA's report on the OSCPA's peer review.
Oh, I think that I put that it is 2024. So I don't know when
Okay.
the report's going to come out, but the last report said that the next monitoring will be 2024.
And do they just send that to us, or do we have to do anything to request that? Or I guess do you know what that process is?
No, Martin.
That's a really good question. I don't know exactly how it works, but I can tell you one way it doesn't work. It does not automatically to us.
Okay.
Okay.
So I know that we will have to put on the schedule for, working with Darlene and saying, hey, when is this shareable? When are you getting? Or at least, maybe what I can do, since I'm already in the middle of writing an email to Darlene, I'll add that in there and saying, hey, could you come back to the next proc with,
That'd be great.
what is your expected time for when that report from the 2024 review for AICPA will be available, because the committee would like to receive it, right? And
Yeah.
I'll just write that part in there. I know there's a bunch of other follow-ups with Darlene, but I don't want to overload one email. I'll do that and the attendances, and I'll hit send here in a moment.
yeah,
Perfect. Thank you, Martin.
And one of the things that I had mentioned that I think is important with this is that it would be really nice if it were allowable, and if we could do it, if Proc could send an observer or a couple of observers when AICPA is doing this, if they're going to be on site there at OSCPA, that we could actually observe their oversight process. Because my feeling is always sort of like, if they're doing it, we don't have to, right? And so if we know that they're doing it, we observe it, it's kind of like the RAB meeting, then we're really meeting our oversight responsibility. So that was my thought for the concept.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. And I almost think when I was reading through the California report that they did
yes.
send observers. So that's a really good point and would be very interesting. So.
And probably just one of us or two of us. I mean, it doesn't need to obviously be the whole committee, but it would be nice.
Yeah.
And then we'd be able to have our member come back then and tell us, okay, this is what really went on. This is what the AICPA review looked like. This is what they did, and then when we get to report, then that'd probably be a good time to have our member report on observation.
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay.
Brenda, my other comment on the agenda or items to put on it is, I guess, what's our status with the Oregon program? We recommended to the board, they approved, like, is there follow-up that needs to be occurring, or what's kind of, I guess, going on there now?
So I think because Darlene wasn't going to be here, I think Darlene is probably the likely person to give us an update on that. So
Okay.
I'll put it on the May agenda.
Okay.
Because she wasn't able to attend. And so I think she's the one who will be able to update, because I think it was the way it was left was that they were assisting the firms off of the Oregon program on the AICPA program. And so we can just get a status update from her. Is that probably a fair assumption, Martin?
It's super fair, because
Awesome.
at the board level, essentially what happened is that the board, essentially what the board approved is essentially, yeah, we're on board with this, but it's really always CPA that has to do the wind down. So the board didn't set a specific end date, it's for OSCPA to execute, right? But what OSCPA needed is for the proc to be on board, for the board to be on board, because it is currently a recognized program, right? So the board basically simply, all it did was authorize, hey, we're on board with you winding down this program, but the hows and the timing, it's really all on OSCPA's side. So I can't give you an update on that.
And then I guess depending on,
sorry.
I was gonna say, just depending on what that timeline is, do we have responsibilities and do we need to do some oversight of that in the meantime?
Yeah, and we'll put that on the agenda because that's a question. It felt like they were moving very quickly. They have a different fiscal year than we do. It felt like the last I'd heard that the OSCPA was moving fairly quickly on that to line it up with their fiscal year somehow, but I may be misspeaking.
Yep. So Kim, can I just, and I apologize if this is not a very smart question, but my understanding is that the wind down essentially means that they're moving them from one part of the plate to the other part of the plate into the AICPA program, right? So I think, help me understand this, right? So we're not like talking about kicking things out. We're just moving them essentially to a different part of the table. What's there for us to know other than they've moved them over? I'm trying to figure out what
I think that's what it is, Martin. I think they were doing some assistance with fees.
Yes, that's
So
right.
that was the part of the wind down, was being, respectful and kind to the firms who are in the Oregon program and
Yep.
making it less disruptive to them. So it really had to do with that, was, it's not like anybody's moving and they're not doing peer review. It's that, this is a change. How can we help you through it? So that was my take on it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there were none of the Oregon program reviews at the December 15th meeting. I think they were all AICPA.
Yeah, I felt like it was going to go pretty quickly because they developed a plan to make it painless for the remaining people on that, in that plan. So.
Right.
All right. Okay, that very last agenda item, I don't know, I think I meant that to be under the development of future agenda items, so we don't really have to talk about that. That's really just something that is a future agenda item. That item K just should be under J, so my bad. So does anybody have anything else for the good of the order? We've covered a lot. So I think then I will adjourn this meeting so I can do the May agenda while it's all fresh in my head, because I have a lot of chicken scratch here. So a lot. So if there's nothing further, I will adjourn the peer review oversight committee meeting at 4:45 p.m. Thank you all.
Hey, thank you very much.